All right, hi, I'm Joe. The claim I'll be refuting today is that the high rate of recidivism in the American prison system can be efficiently solved through the implementation of more rehabilitation practices. A little reminder, recidivism is when someone that goes in the prison system comes out and goes back into the prison system. The secondary claims that were made, first one, the rehabilitation practices would change the perspective of the prisoners. Second one, that prisoners are more likely to contribute to society, and the third is that it's more cost effective. Now for the first point here, before I get into it, I'm just going to kind of talk about the source a little bit. The source used for a lot of points within my opponent's speech is this company called PEW, and they set up these rehab and education programs in these prison systems. And they had a lot of unsourced facts that they were presenting about what they do. And it just seemed to me more like a glorified advertisement than a credible source. So now to get into that point, rehabilitation practices, I don't think it would change the perspective of all prisoners. Not all people, especially prisoners, value education. In 2014, an Omaha prison stated that only about 13% of their prison inmates were enrolled in their programs, which include anger management, substance abuse, and sex offender treatment. And another point they brought up was that prisoners get to talk about their problems. Now, while this could be a good thing for some prisoners, many prisoners are in prison for things that they don't want to talk about, like gruesome crimes such as rape or just murder, just stuff that they could induce anxiety. A lot of them have PTSD. While I don't have any statistics on this, it's just that's what PTSD is. When you bring up like subjects like that you don't want to talk about, it could be a negative thing instead of a positive thing. Okay, now get into the second point they brought up, which again was prisoners are more likely to contribute to society. While this could help, these rehabilitation programs could help, prisoners have a chance to contribute to society when they leave prison. It's up to them if they want to change, and it's not. While the rehabilitation could help, it doesn't necessarily it doesn't have a 100% effective rate on it. Okay, get into the third point. That it's more cost effective. Now again, this point was supported with the company PEW, that they were saying that it's going to be more cost effective, so that they want you to use their programs and give them money, essentially. There's no proof that, there is proof that the education and rehabilitation is cheaper than incarceration, but there's no proof on its effectiveness to keep the rehab out of the prison system. The other evidence that was supported this claim was a CNN money chart, and it showed the amount of money spent on incarceration versus the amount of money spent on education. And while it was an eye-opening chart, it didn't show in any way that spending money on education would reduce the spending in incarceration. Again, going back to something I said earlier, while rehab and education is cheaper than incarceration, rehab is not always successful. There's always a chance that these people being rehabbed are going to be reincarcerated, and that's more money. I think the cost-effective thing to do in this situation is a whole nother debate within itself. But I don't know. Well, to conclude, I don't 100% disagree with my opponent's claim. I just think there are some flaws in the evidence and the reasoning presented. Thank you.
All right, Joe, structural stuff is pretty good, so there's not any problem there. I do get a sense that a lot of the arguments in all of the supporting points that you're presenting are the kinds of presses that you could have made immediately after hearing the speech. So in other words, having heard the speech, just thinking about what's been said, here are my responses. Here's what I could say about that kind of thing. And you articulated them pretty well. But you also had a little bit more time to get ready, and it seems like it could be developed a little bit more. The one place where you have any counter evidence on that point is the lack of participation in programs in the Oklahoma prisons that you cite. And I thought that that was a pretty good piece of information because it does support this notion that there maybe not be a whole lot of motivation of prisoners to participate for a variety of reasons. And you hypothesize about what some of those reasons are. And I'm not saying that those aren't necessarily good reasons, but like you said, you don't really have any evidence. You're just kind of speculating on that particular point. So it's okay. I think that the notion that rehabilitation is going to work, there's got to be research out there that looks at these kinds of programs. You've got a generic challenge to PEW. There is a well-known think tank and publisher called Pew, the Pew Research Service. So I don't know that that's the same organization. It sounds to me like you found that it's a different organization. Maybe it means prison education workshops or something like that. I don't really know. But I don't think you know either. It's not clear to me in this generic attack on the argument, that they're basically advertising for their own program. Seems like it's kind of underdeveloped here without any additional data on it and specific reason to believe that that's in fact what's going on. So that's, I think, a little bit iffy. The idea that they can contribute to society on that second point, it really sounded circular, whatever you said there. It didn't seem like it made any dent in the argument on that point. The third point is about the cost efficiency. And obviously, it's cheaper to do a lot of things than it is to house people in prison. But the real question is, doing those things, does that reduce crime? Does it protect the public as much or in the same ways? And that seems to me like the comparison that ought to be made, and that's the thing that we're missing. So, for example, we've got 50 different states. Some of them have got to have different policies about these kinds of things. The states that do just imprisonment as a solution to their problem, do they have a higher or lower crime rate than states that have more rehabilitation and offer greater opportunities? Do we have greater recidivism for people who've completed a degree in school or gone through some rehab or something like that that's going on there? Or are the recidivism rates the same? We don't get any information on that. And that seems like something that would make a natural argument here. So I think we've got good arguments, but they're just kind of intuitively good arguments on the surface, and that you needed a little bit more information on a couple of the points. All right, thank you.